Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the social brain. There might be some noise in the background, so I'm going to try to speak up loudly so that you understand what I'm saying. This lecture here should cover most of the information from chapter 2 in your book. So this hopefully will supplement that for you, hopefully break things down for you in an easy to understand and digest manner. But today we're going to talk about our biological need to connect with other human beings. What should happen, hopefully, is that we can explain how and why the human brain has evolved in the manner in which it did, and also to that end, understand the importance of culture and nature working together, and how they affect our choices and behaviors and make culture a better way of being social. So a big question is basically going to be, what is the importance of culture? How does culture fit into our understanding of ourself and our social self? And then summarize how the two systems of the duplex mind differ and work together, while describing how inner processes serve our interpersonal functions. So hopefully you're getting the message that a large theme here is socializing and understanding how our mind allows us to do that. So here's a brief example. So let's say we are talking about the concept of gender identity, right? So let's say Brenda is born a boy, but raised as a girl after a severely botched circumcision. And those botched circumcisions happen a lot more than we would like to discuss, but they do happen quite a bit. So Brenda then never feels like she fits in. She wants to play rough games like boys. She becomes rebellious, right? Begins to have developmental issues and never seems to quite fit in, never seems to quite feel like herself or himself. Additional cases have revealed that others born as boys but raised as girls did not turn out to be typical adult women. In other words, there was something about them that defied our conceptions of what a typical adult woman is, right? So even though you're raised as a woman, something is going on internally and biologically to where you are still acting out and displaying attributes that you would typically relate to being a boy. So some parts of us are simply biological. There are some parts, no matter how we try to nurture them, no matter how we try to change them, no matter how we try to socialize them, are just going to be our pure biological manifestations. So some parts of us, no matter what we do on the outside, we cannot change. So when we talk about the psyche, we're talking about this broad term for mind, encompassing emotions, desires, perceptions, and all other psychological processes, right? So it's this internal understanding of our mind, how our mind explains emotions, explains desires, explains these things, and how the conception of our mind makes us who we are. All right, nature and culture shape each other. So nature has prepared human beings specifically for culture. In other words, our biological base for who we are, who we come into the world as, lays a foundation and makes it so that we are able to function in a cultural place. Biology can help to support culture, and biology helps to support socialization. So at some point in the future, you may receive a question of some kind, which is, how does nature and culture interact with one another, right? So I want you to take special note about this slide here, because this whole entire chapter 2 is about this process. But specifically, this slide here offers some insight into that. Also, just a learning tool for you. If you ever see me do something crazy with something, highlight it, italics, make it a different color, anything like that to make it stand out, it means that I think that thing is really important for you to know. And there is a chance that you possibly see that again in the future. So, what is nature? We hear this all the time, right? Nature versus nurture, right? What is the nature of the man? What is the human nature, right? So nature defined physical world around us, including the natural laws and the natural processes that we have to follow, right? Human behavior is based in the physical world. Human behavior is based in these laws. So things like genes, hormones, your brain structure, all the innate biological processes that are happening around us and in us, and how these biological processes dictate our choices and our actions. So we can't say that we're separated from our biology. To an extent, our biology controls us greatly. Now, we have some influence over what we do with that biology, but internally, innately, that biology distinctly controls what we do, who we are, and what we become. It also influences our reactions to certain things that we see, feel, and experience in the natural world. And our biology affects how we function and how we interact with the natural world. And then evolution and doing what's natural. So who we are today as a species, we've evolved to be, right? Over the course of human history, our biology has changed and shifted to allow us to function in this social world. Over the last 2 decades, many researchers have focused on how evolution has influenced social behavior. So a focus of chapter 2 is in what ways we have evolved and how that evolution impacts the way that we interact with one another. So Darwin, you've probably heard of at this point, right? Came up with the theory of evolution and a focus on how change occurs in nature. Then natural selection, I'm sure at this point you've also heard of, right? So which traits survive, which disappear, right? Survival of the fittest. So which members of the species are living long enough to pass their genes on? Which members of the species are dying out? With the thought process being that the weaker members of the species die out, the stronger members survive, and over the course of time, the species becomes stronger because only the strongest genes are being passed on. A mutation then is when some new gene or combination of genes happens, and that mutation typically helps that member of the species stand out. And if it's a mutation that allows for that member of the species to become really, really strong, typically that mutation will be passed down. And then in reproduction, simply reproducing individuals who have those genes and carry those genes. So you and I are social creatures. You and I are social animals. It's part of the difficulty that we're all experiencing right now with COVID-19 and social distancing. As you've seen in the news, no doubt, as you've seen on social media, human beings are quite terrible at social distancing, right? Especially Americans, which is part of the reason that we can't seem to shake this thing. Human beings want to be around other human beings. A large majority of you would rather us being in a large lecture hall talking right now, as opposed to me being in my home, you being in yours, and you're watching this on some delayed basis. We want to be together. We want to socialize. Human beings survive by being with other human beings. To be human is to seek connection with other people. This is why, if you, in law enforcement and incarceration, one of the worst things you can do with anybody is throw them into isolation, right? A 1 month isolation, a 2 month isolation, these kind of things cause insanity. Even the most antisocial person, okay, wants to make a connection of some kind. It's who we are as a species. We want to be around each other. And there's benefits to doing that. Being social has many different evolutionary benefits. First, we find more food together, right? It's really hard to mate and reproduce if you're by yourself. We can alert each other to danger, so we look out for one another. And then if there's the sick and injured among us, we can take care of them, right? So if you think about it, the structure of being together helps us to ensure that we as a whole can survive and that we can promote longevity amongst all of us. We want to be around each other because it's good for us to be around each other. We live longer that way. So social distancing goes against everything evolutionarily speaking that is in us to want to be together. How many times have you looked on the news and seen in various college campuses, well, not UNT, because I know UNT, but I know that's not happening here. But how many times at various college campuses have you gone online and seen large groups of college students together, partying, barbecuing, having a good time, right? Even though many local and state laws have said you must socially distance. Well, part of that's due to age. A large part of that, though, is also due to evolution. Evolutionarily speaking, it is difficult to push yourself away from other people at all times. So the social brain theory says that animals with bigger brains live in larger, more complex social groups. Animals who have bigger brains live in larger, more complex social groups. And then the human brain has evolved to enable human beings to have rich, complex social lives. So the more our brain grows, the more we're able to live in social groups. Our brain continues to grow bigger and bigger. And the bigger it grows, the larger our social groups and larger our social gatherings become. So social animals then have learned that you can accomplish things by social interaction, right? I need you and you need me. We have to work together, and in doing so, the species is likely to survive. But on a smaller level, by working together, you and I both are more likely to succeed. I help you with something, you help me with something. There's also differential knowledge, right? I know things that you don't know. And even though I'm going to step on the ego of many professors, guess what? You know things that we don't know. So together, you and I working ensures success for both of us. I need you, but you need me as well. And because of that need, our brains have grown tremendously in size. Because the truth of the matter is, I don't need just you. I need you, and 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 you over there, I especially need you. I especially need you, right? And so together then, as a whole, our group benefits because all of us can answer and provide for each other's needs. To facilitate that, our brains have grown to a tremendous size. I want you to think about that when you think about how the social brain is related to culture, right? Your brain is growing largely to encourage your socializing, right? And your socializing is leading to a type of culture development, right? So us together is reflective of how our brain grows. This is a this is a goofy this is a pretty goofy cartoon. When I was a kid, we didn't have big juicy brains to probe. No, we had to get by abducting 1K people with puny brains, hairy bodies. So that's clearly goofy. It's clearly crazy. And I will throw those in there from time to time, right? But again, it sort of gets to the point that as time has gone on, a human being's brain has gone on because they're in bigger social groups now, versus caveman, which was off by himself before he began to socialize, trying to find dinner for tonight, right? All right, so social animals or cultural animals are most likely some combination of both. Social animals are animals that seek connections to others and prefer to live, work, and play with other members of their species. Cultural animal theory says that evolution shaped the human psyche to enable humans to create and take part in culture. In other words, biologically speaking, there are species that want to be other members of their species, right? But that evolution shaped our human psyche. And remember what the psyche is, right? Psyche is our mind, our ability to process, right? Those inner workings we have. So evolution combined with our psyche to move us in the direction of not just socializing with members of our species, but in socializing with them, actively creating culture, actively creating a series of values, beliefs, ideas, and traditions with those members of our species, right? So there's a lot to unpack there, but remember, when I said, what is culture, right? How I define culture, a series of values, beliefs, ideas, and traditions that have been established amongst a group of people. You're going to want to have that definition of culture in the back of your mind as you continue through chapter 2. Evolution has shaped the human psyche to allow us to create culture. So we are the innovators of the ideas and the beliefs and the traditions with the people that we're with. Culture, then, is the essence of what makes us human beings. It's the essence of what brings together the species. And you've seen, or you can see, worldwide, different groups of human beings create different cultures, right? Different groups of human beings communicate differently, right? So languages across the world sound different from one another, but language reflects the values and the ideas and the beliefs of a culture. The key way to understand a culture is to listen to the language, right? Listen to the words that are used, listen to how the language is spoken, listen to how fast the language is spoken, thinking about descriptive words, right? Some languages have 32 words for the idea of love. Other languages have like one word for love. Some languages have no word for it, right? That reflects something specific to that culture. So if you want to learn about culture, you need to assess the language, you need to assess the traditions. You also need to, and this is kind of a fun one, you need to assess the food. The food of a people tell you their history, it tells you their ideas on health, it tells you their ideas, their habits about work. Food tells you the story of a people. And it also tells you and gives you some sense of idea about their cultural traditions. Human beings all together have built these cultural structures. And as such, when you're socialized as a young child, you are socialized into that culture, and the culture is constantly telling you what to do and who to be, so that you can be a member belonging to that culture and continuing to propagate the cultural values. So, well, I basically just did this whole slide without going to the slide. So go ahead and take some time to look at this. So everything I just said is here. Shared ideas matter, right? And there's even subcultures, right? So there is, for example, American culture, right? What kind of subcultures are in America? You might say there's a conservative culture, right? There's a progressive culture. There's African American culture. There's Latinx culture, right? There's a religious culture, right? There's a religious culture. There is a LGBTQ plus culture. There's an Ashkenazi Jewish culture, right? There's football culture, right? Well, I'm sure that I have a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans watching this video right now as we speak. Right? So so even within cultures, subgroups can form together and decide how they want to implement that shared values, belief system, and traditions, and how they want to implement it in their own unique way to uphold their own values. So they're probably adding values to the tradition or to their culturally defined values. So culture then, in a way, acts like a social system, right? So think about and just reflect on what are some subcultures you might be a part of. Right? Just pause the video right now and just think for a second, what subcultures am I a part of? Why am I a part of those cultures? How have those cultures influenced me? How did those cultures create who I am today? And what type of messages from those cultures did I get as a child? That's an important one. As a child, you learn some message about what it means to be you. So where did you get that from? Culture, so I've already spoken on this a little bit. Food matters in culture. So culture influences what we eat, right? So in nature, humans biologically and naturally tend to eat meat and are inclined to do so, right? We can tell from the formation of our teeth, designed for ripping flesh off of bone. Culturally speaking, though, you can override that and say, the religion I have prevents me from eating meat. Therefore, I'm a vegetarian. You can override some parts of your nature. Culture is strong enough to accomplish that. And that speaks volumes. That's amazing. If you think about it, that is so incredible, right? Culture is so powerful, it can override your natural inclination. That is amazing. That's an amazing thought. I'm a bit of a nerd and I like research and I like these kind of understandings about how we function. The culture you're in can dictate to you how you will express your nature and what nature you're going to express. That is mind-blowing. It is really powerful if you think about it. So I really want you to read this chapter. I don't want you to fall into the trap of just watching the video. You can read the chapter, definitely do so. If you don't have the book yet, you and I are working together to solve that issue. If you have the book, definitely read chapter 2. Because it's incredible that as a species we've learned to have nature follow culture as opposed to culture follow nature. Incredible. So the culture tells you you're going to be a vegetarian. And then you begin to be like, yes, because it's wrong to eat animals. In other words, my nature that's within me is wrong. Think about the ability of us to recognize what our nature is and then to make the moral judgment that the nature we have in us is inherently wrong. We need to fix it. That is absolutely amazing on a purely social psychological level. That's incredible. All right, so remember the question, right? How does nature and culture interact, right? So this is a good slide, right? Okay. So nature and culture interact to influence us, right? So professional athletes are likely to have been born in January or around January because as kids, they're in leagues with younger, smaller kids. Younger kids drop out more often. Older, larger, more coordinated kids didn't get more attention from the coaches, right? So your birthday influences when you are enrolling in sports. And because you are survival of the fittest, you're older, you're bigger, younger kids can't handle it, they drop out, the coach gives you more attention, and then you go on to join the NBA, NFL, or the PGA golf, and make, or any other sport that there is, and make $100 billion, right? So there's something to be said about the luck of the draw, right? Something to be said about the randomness of you being here and how you being here has encouraged you to pursue sports and that way ensuring your own success. You know, that kid born in September might not be as well off as you. So if you have a January birthday, this lecture is for you. Nature and culture shape each other. So nature does shape culture and culture shapes nature, right? So nature tells us who we're supposed to be, and we might begin to form culture around that. But then culture tells us how we're going to express that nature. So the two work together to form who we are. So being a cultural animal is different than being a social animal. Now remember, the social animal just wants to be with other people, right? We just want to be with other human beings. But being a cultural animal is different in the sense that there's a division of labor. You and I share knowledge. I give you knowledge that you can now use for your benefit. You give me insight on things that I can learn from, okay? And I want you to realize that when you're in your classes, okay? You have insight that you can offer your instructor, your professors. You have valuable insight. You have valuable understanding. You have valuable knowledge. So any scholar who discounts anything you have to say is someone who hasn't quite realized that humility is also a good thing, right? You're valuable. You're valuable. Your knowledge base is valuable. Your knowledge base informs the class. It informs the university, and your knowledge base informs the society around you. So it's important that you realize that you have something very valuable to offer. And I have something valuable to offer too. And when we offer these valuable things to each other, what we're doing in essence is we're increasing the pool of knowledge. We're increasing information that we can all share. And in doing so, we make the culture and we make the society better. One way we do that is through effective conflict resolution. You and I have a disagreement. Let's say we see things completely differently, right? You and I, because of our shared knowledge and shared humanity and our understandings of trying to maintain peace within the culture, you and I find an effective way to discuss those differences and to resolve the conflict in a peaceful manner. Culture teaches us how to solve disagreements peacefully. Right? Our nature might be to pick up sticks and bricks and throw them at each other. Right? And sometimes we really want to do that to each other. And sometimes we do, which is not good. But culture has taught us that there's a better way forward to maintain the sanctity and the growth of the culture around us. So culturally speaking, we know what to do to solve issues. All right, so, cultural norms do vary. For example, Americans generally do not sleep in the same room as their children, and in Japan, children sleep in the same room as their mother, right? So we all have cultural norms. No one's norm is worse or better, but what our norm is has been established and is normal for us, right? And this slide is important because, how to say this? Sometimes, and this is especially true on social media, we find ourselves as Americans and as Westerners putting westernized ideals of norms onto other people, right? For example, if there are people who eat a certain animal that we don't agree with, right? And we judge them for doing that. Why are you eating that animal, whatever it is? What we're doing in effect is saying our westernized or Americanized culture is better than yours. And you need to do things our way because our culture is superior and our culture is supreme. Your culture is bad. Your culture is wrong. We've seen this in history, haven't we? With colonization, right? Europeans go into a place, they colonize it in the name of religion. Then cultural and historical religions are lost, and now those people are Christians, right? And I'm saying that as an example. I'm not talking ill of one or the other, but I am saying that historically we have seen cultures move in, take over a place, and then teach those people their new cultural norms, teach them to eat the food that they have, teach them to worship and have religion the way that they do, right? So in effect, what we're doing is we're saying our cultural practices then are better than yours. And you need to assimilate to our culture. So we're going to forcefully spread it to you. So we have to be careful landing this plane, I'm gonna land this, we have to be careful then when we are judging others' cultural differences, cultural beliefs, and we can't make the basis of that judgment just be that it's different from ours. How much more understanding would there be in the world if we were more tolerating of other individuals' cultural beliefs? Right? If you think about it, who are we to say which cultural belief is best? Everybody believes that their culture is the superior one. But objectively, is it? These are deep questions that go beyond the scope of this class, but there are questions for us to think about, questions you should be thinking about as we continue in chapter 2. So there's two modes of thinking about things. There's two forms of processing. There's automatic processing and there's controlled processing. Automatic processing is processing that occurs instinctively almost, right? So it's outside of consciousness, it's simple operations, and it's always on, even in your sleep, right? So automatic processing is processing that takes place that you don't think about. It's just, boom, there it is, right? Controlled processing is a very conscious, undelivered form of processing. You can call this controlled or deliberate processing. And this operates in consciousness. It turns off in sleep. It turns off in sleep because you're not conscious, right? Automatic processing does a thing, and then controlled processing goes back later to try to explain why you did it. For example, you're walking down the street, right? I'm a fairly big guy. So you're walking down the street, it's late afternoon, evening, and you see me walking towards you. You then instinctively cross the street. Automatically, you were like, you had a thought that you had to instinctively get away. There could have been some unconscious or unknown fear or danger that you had. You don't know who I am. You just know that there is a strange looking, weird looking individual approaching me as I'm walking on the street, right? What happens later is that your controlled processing comes in and says, oh, well, the reason why I did that was I thought he was going to run into me, or he looked like someone I was trying to avoid. He looked like an ex of some kind, right? Or he looked like he was in a hurry and was going to run me over. So you automatically do a thing, and then you're unconsciously, and your conscious mind goes back and tries to figure out why you did that. Your controlled system is trying to explain why your automatic system reacted the way that it did. Consciousness, right, helps us learn, think, choose, and respond. And consciousness helps us know the difference between ourself and others' self, right? Consciousness helps me to know who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm doing what I'm doing in this moment, and it gives me a guide for what to do, right? If I'm conscious, I can have ideas about things, I can experience different emotions, and then I can control and override sometimes automatic processes. This is a point that I forgot to mention. Your controlled processing does have the ability to override your automatic processing, but it takes considerable mental effort to do so. You can see me walking the street and instinctively you want to cross. In the first example you did, but then something inside you can be like, no, I gotta keep walking, I gotta keep walking, I gotta keep walking. I gotta make myself walk. So your control processing can explain your automatic processing, but it can also override it if you expend a significant amount of mental energy. Table 2.1 in your book talks a little bit about the differences between the two forms of processing. So I have that for you here, right? Automatic processing is fast, it's unintentional, it's typically inflexible, and it typically wants to act in a very quick amount of time. Typically, there's no time to think about it, right? So it's effortless. You might think of it in terms of intuition, right? What does your intuition tell you that you should do in this moment? And how quickly can you do that? Because it's below the level of consciousness, there's not a lot of time to process while you're doing something. You just do it. Versus your deliberate processing, where it's effortful and you're reasoning, right? Your reasoning and your controlled processing can perform complex operations. Your automatic processing cannot. Your automatic processing has one goal: to react as quickly as possible in that situation. So the automatic system makes conscious thought possible and serves the deliberate system. The deliberate system can suppress the automatic urges, and the conscious override can serve culture. You need to be able to control the automatic processing to be a member of a culture, right? If everybody's just doing what they instinctively want to do or intuitively want to do, it would create chaos if you don't want, right? So remember, your automatic system might make a decision and your control system then will try to explain why it did. But to function in your culture, you need to have an effective conscious override. You need to have an effective controlled system. So, what do we seek? We seek social acceptance. Right? We seek to be around others. We seek to work within a cultural bounds. Right? Culture changes as time changes. So in the old days, for instance, cursing and picking your nose might be unacceptable. And yet today, cursing is accepted, but picking your nose in public is not. That cultural rule changed. At some point, well, I feel like cursing is gonna always be socially accepted because everybody, but like at some point though in the future, that could change, right? So what was okay before is not, because culture has decided it no longer is. So we are built to relate to one another. You and I have one goal: to be acceptable to other human beings. Right now, in the deepest recesses of my mind, every time I record one of these lectures, I think to myself, gee, I hope they like it. Hope I'm clear. Hope it's a good lecture for them. Hope that I'm actually teaching them the stuff that they would consider valuable. Hope that they accept me as a professor, right? You might have these same worries about your friends. You hope that they accept you. You hope that they see how valuable you are. You hope that they see how wonderful you are, right? To maximize the chance that you are accepted socially, you must develop skills and capabilities. Inner processes might serve your interpersonal functions, and they enable you to connect with other human beings, right? Your automatic processes, your intuition, prepares you on how to successfully navigate and function in interactions with other groups. So, what does this mean? So hopefully you've gotten a sense now at this point that in the natural you have certain impulses, many of which are unacceptable. And culture is designed to teach you to have self-control and to have restraint on those impulses. Right? So the only real exception to that is disgust reactions, right? So you see something, you taste something, you smell something, disgust operates within you, and you immediately stop trying to eat whatever that thing is. Because those are natural inclinations that are telling you, if you eat this thing, you're gonna get sick or possibly die. And then timetables for meals, right? Culture decides breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So culture decides these things for you, and then you try to maintain meals at those times. But typically, nature tells you to go, culture tells you to stop. So, survival of the fittest, right? You see the worst of human beings when a danger is happening. Because each of us has a very strong impulse to live and to preserve ourselves. So we become very selfish because if it comes down between you and me, I want to be sure that me wins, right? I want to be sure that I survive. Culture is the opposite of that. Culture tells you you don't need to worry about yourself. You need to try to save other members of your species. What is best for society? And in what ways can you maximize the survival of everybody else in your culture? Nature is about self-preservation. Culture is about helping everyone else. The trade-off is basically when you're presented with a choice of some kind, that's not the best choice, right? It's a trade-off. You have to get rid of something in order to get something, but you can't get everything that you want. We see this a lot for athletes, right, who need to be at a certain fitness level in a short amount of time. So you make a trade-off. I will use performance-enhancing drugs. I will survive. But in doing so, if I get busted, I'll get kicked out of the sport for 5 years and fined heavily. And then one thing that we do that humans don't, that other animals don't do, is we sacrifice the present for a future payoff, right? I was in grad school for 7 years. Of that time, actually, and if you count my master's program and the work that I did, really it's more like 12 years. During that time, a lot of struggles, right? It is very hard to be a grad student for that long because you're not paid to do so, really. You're paid very minimal amount, and you're living off of ramen for 8 years, right? So you do that for that long, so that's a day. I can be here in front of a computer talking to you. That's a doctor. We will sacrifice our present for a future payoff. Right now, many of you are making all kinds of sacrifices just to be here, just to be in front of this computer listening to me. You're sacrificing time, you're sacrificing money, you're making sacrifices that we can't even understand. And you're doing this so that at some point in the future, you would get a degree that will allow you to do anything you want to do in the world. Other animals do not have the ability to do this. Culture has taught us the value of sacrificing the present for the future. And I would just say this as well, as human beings, there are differences that we have between animals that animals don't have, right? Do animals have a culture? Your book gets into this, and this slide sort of demonstrates some ideals about how we differ from human beings. But I think the main focus of this slide really is that, there are certain biological trade-offs, certain social trade-offs that we have as human beings that are designed to help us to encourage the growth and development of the species, right? So we know dogs hear many things humans don't hear, but they do not hear as precisely as humans do, right? So we hear in a precise manner versus dogs that might hear in a more generalized way. And most sense organs, even artificial, such as cameras, have a trade-off between detection, how much they can see, and resolution, right? So the point of the matter is there are certain trade-offs that we are allowing ourselves to make that other animals can't really make, or other animals don't make, right? And even technological things have to make a trade-off, right? So we can detect human movement. How many times have you watched these crime shows and all of the images are super grainy, right? It's because it takes a lot of battery power, and a lot of money in order to get that fine image. Companies don't want to spend that, so instead they make a trade-off. Trade-off is we can see an image of someone moving, but it's not going to be a clear image. But this way the battery will last longer and will capture more people. So we constantly make a decision to make a trade-off that other animals and other things don't necessarily do. And then people look to each other as well. Later, we will get into Solomon Asch, so don't worry about knowing this experiment so much. I will show this experiment to you later. But for right now, just know this. Culture provides a framework for us to reference other people. And we reference other people because we need to know what to do in a strange environment. All right, trying to keep it in time today. I don't know if I did or not, but this is the summary slide. This summary is exactly what chapter 2 in your book was about. Human behavior results from a mix of nature and culture. Nature and culture interact with each other to influence human behavior. Culture is a powerful force in people, even overcoming nature at times. So if I ever say to you, right, how do nature and culture interact? I want you to think about this entire lecture. I want you to be able to provide examples. I want you to be able to talk through how they influence one another. All right, so a lot of information for this week. I don't know when you're going to watch this. I don't know when I'm uploading it, but I do hope that you are peaceful right now. I do hope that I'm getting myself together in terms of getting the modules out to you in a timely fashion. I do hope that this is better than our first week shenanigans. And if there's anything in the class you have questions on, any comments, anything you want to say, please, I do value those emails and I do respond to them. And I hope that you have a good rest of your week. And don't forget to control any anxieties that you have, right? Don't let the anxiety control you. You're definitely going to survive. You're definitely going to do well in this class. Okay, I just want you to learn the material, and that's what the focus is going to be. But you're definitely going to do well in the class. All right, I will talk to you all later, and I will see you whenever.